Travis, and I'm here to tell you about my new show, Lolita Podcast. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov is one of the most controversial works of all time, and our culture has done its protagonist a huge disservice over the years. I've spent the last few months getting to the bottom of how America turned this abused young girl into a sex symbol, and what that says about us. New episodes drop weekly on Mondays. Listen to Lolita Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You already know that The Challenge is the most heart-pounding competition show on television. But do you ever wonder how challenge competitors are selected or which challenges were too dangerous for TV? Well, you can learn all that and so much more on MTV's official Challenge podcast. Hosted by your girl Tori and me, Anissa, we're giving you the inside scoop on the brand new season of The Challenge. Let's go, baby. Listen to MTV's official Challenge podcast starting on December 10th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go on a Thursday. It is great to have you in live from star-studded Los Angeles. This is The Herd, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. It is nice to have, we're indoors today. Of course, it's California and Los Angeles. That's where we have to be. Joy Taylor is joining me. Joy, how are you?
I'm great. Look at the NBA trying to swoop in and steal some headlines during NFL season.
Sorts of tasty stuff in the NBA.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. And there was let me start with this, though. There was a football game going on last night. Listen, good news, bad news. What do you want to hear first? I'm always a bad news. Just lay it out, okay? I can handle it. I'm a big boy. I'm a grown-up. Don't give me fluff. I'm not looking for whipped cream. Give me the cake. Give me the pie. Let's go. I can take bad news. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, you need to grow up. This is not a Super Bowl team. There it is. Go cry in your terrible towels. This is not a Super Bowl team. You're not. You're 11-0 and it feels hollow. Own it. Mike Tomlin, a man's man, who if you asked him good news or bad news, would say, give me the bad news first. Here's Mike Tomlin, who knows more about the Steelers than all of us, his thoughts on his team.
Mike, you had some red zone failures and a number of drop passes. Would you attribute that to anything in particular?
Sucking.
Yeah, that's it. Pittsburgh's not a Super Bowl team. Tennessee's better today? Yeah, they are. I know you beat them, but now Bud Dupree out for the year with an injury. So Devin Bush and Bud Dupree and your front seven both out. You're not stopping King Henry. You're not beating Kansas City. You can't lose two of your best players defensively. I mean, this is a team, I always had this theory, say it out loud. Before you do something in life, say it out loud. Let's play say it out loud with the Steelers. You can't run the ball. How do you take the ball away from Patrick Mahomes? Run the ball. You can't. You had to throw 51 times last night to beat COVID-19 ravaged Baltimore. You can't run the ball. Oh, by the way, your two best linebackers, arguably two of your top three are out, so you're not going to stop the run as much. Baltimore, again, ran it 2 times this year against you. You've had the second easiest schedule in the NFL. You face 4 backup quarterbacks. Let's be honest about the Steelers. You're getting worse, and teams like Seattle are getting better. You're not a Super Bowl team this morning. I mean, good God, you had the ball for 33 minutes. You had to throw 51 times to escape a Baltimore team using a backup quarterback. And I went this morning and I went and looked at the Steelers, who they've beaten. In week 1, they beat Daniel Jones. Well, yeah, he had a new coach who'd never been a head coach, and the Giants started 0-5. Then you beat Drew Lock. Oh, my bad, he got hurt in the game, Jeff Driscoll. And then you had this streak where everybody bought into you. You narrowly edged Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, you beat Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill, Lamar Jackson, but outside of Tannehill, which one of those guys is playing well now? After that, you beat Garrett Gilbert, Joe Burrow, Jake Luton, and RG3. Just own it. Say it out loud. Most important part of your defense, 2 huge injuries. You won't stop the run as well. You don't run the ball, meaning you can't keep it away from Patrick Mahomes. Or Josh Allen. I mean, this is the reality of the NFL. Like, I never feel quite this way in baseball and basketball, or maybe even hockey. But in football, we have this component called injuries. And Seattle this morning and the New York Giants are much better than they were in week 2, 3, and 4. And the Chicago Bears, the 49ers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are not nearly as good as they were in weeks 3, 4, and 5. And that's the reality this morning. And what are they doing well? Kansas City's doing virtually everything well. Seattle now looks like they're starting to put things together. Green Bay. What is Pittsburgh doing well? Ask Mike Tomlin. Here's what he saw last night.
I'm really disappointed in our performance tonight. We did enough to win, but that's all. It was really junior varsity, to be quite honest with you, and it was in all 3 phases. We couldn't run the ball effectively when we needed to. We dropped too many significant passes, very catchable, makeable passes. We didn't make significant plays in the special teams game. Our kickoff coverage unit wasn't good enough. We turned the damn ball over. We gave up big plays in critical moments on defense. Can't have it. They converted a long run on a possession down before the half. Unacceptable. They had a 70-yard touchdown late in the game. Unacceptable.
6 of the 11 Pittsburgh wins are 1 possession. That is with the second easiest schedule in the league and facing 4 backups. This is, I don't care what their record is. I've never been beholden to records. They're getting dropped to about 7th in the herd hierarchy. This is not a Super Bowl team. And the problem is, what you need to beat Kansas City is a running game, don't have it. And what you need to beat Tennessee is the ability to tackle the best running back in football, and now you don't have it. Devin Bush out earlier this year, Bud Dupree out now. Every bit of this skepticism on the Steelers is completely earned. All right, as Joy said, interesting NBA day. So these 2 players I've been critical of, Russell Westbrook and John Wall, for different reasons. Yesterday they got traded for one another. I don't care about the first-round draft pick. NBA is a developmental draft pick. Houston will sell that pick off to somebody else. I think many people believe, hey, bad contracts, it's a wash. I do not believe that. I believe the Washington Wizards slam dunk won this trade because I think Russell Westbrook is significantly better than John Wall. I'll just let you know this, that 9 of 12 years Russell Westbrook has been in the NBA, he's made an all-NBA team. In 10 years, John Wall's made it once, and he's falling apart. I've been critical of Russell Westbrook. He can drive me crazy in the playoffs, but in the last 37 games of the NBA's regular season last year, oh, by the way, he was 3rd-team All-NBA. 30 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 50% field goals, and 77.5 from the free throw line. What was John Wall doing? An Achilles surgery. Off a heel injury. He hasn't played in 2 years. And whereas Westbrook's game is hyper-athletic, he's 32, I still get that. Wall's game is hyper-speed. Off these surgeries, I don't think I get it. Yes, both guys are expensive. Yes, both guys' contracts are brutal. Yet neither guy can hit a 3. Yes, neither guy I love. They're not the classic point guard. But with Russell Westbrook, I get a healthier player. I get a better player. And here's another thing that matters. Russell Westbrook is completely obsessed with basketball. One of the reasons he wanted out of Houston, because he said the culture was too loose. He's acknowledged, my best friend is the basketball. He's got his issues, but I'm a big fan of his passion. Nobody plays harder in the league than Russell Westbrook. John Wall, when he was healthy, was often indifferent. Listen, these guys are both on the back 9, but Westbrook's like walking up to the 11th tee box. Wall's headed to the 15th fairway. I think Westbrook is a first-ballot Hall of Famer who drives me nuts, but I'm not so sure he's out of his prime. I'm really not. I think he's one of these guys that's had an incredibly long prime. I just think genetics, DNA, Westbrook is one of the most athletic players in league history. I don't think he's slowing down. My issue with him is his flaws he can't correct. It's who he is. John Wall, way past his prime, and I was never a huge fan of it. And here's something else that matters. In the East, Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal will be incredibly relevant. John Wall in the point guard heavy West is a non-story in Houston. And in this NBA league we have, relevance matters. Westbrook and Bradley Beal are going to make the playoffs. Russell Westbrook's won a lot of big games and played in a lot of big games, even last year. I don't believe this is like two bad contracts being exchanged. They're not good contracts. I'm not arguing that. But to me, this is a slam dunk. For all my criticisms of Westbrook, he is basketball obsessed. John Wall often seems indifferent. He's still maybe the best athlete outside of LeBron in the league. John Wall, built on speed, is coming off another surgery. One guy's going to the weaker West. He's the better player. Less of a player's going to the point guard rich East. Slam dunk for Washington. I don't think it's just if you go to Westbrook's last 35, 36, 37 games, he's all NBA. Again, he struggled to correct his flaws. But you're being dishonest intellectually if you don't think Westbrook's got game. You're in the history, look how many people on the planet? 9 billion? He made third team All-NBA. And that's in a league, by the way, where there's never been this many good guards. I mean, there are teams that have it's insane. Like Steph and Clay are the best backcourt of all time. Now this year they won't play because Clay's hurt, but there's 12 to 15 incredible backcourts. The game is international. You got guys now 6'7" playing point, and Russell Westbrook is third team All-NBA and doesn't appear to be out of his prime. So, way to go, Washington. And by the way, James Harden. There's a story out this morning that James Harden preferred John Wall over Russell Westbrook. I'm over Harden telling me who he prefers because we keep rolling out people for him. He doesn't get along with any of them. Coming up next, so Anthony Davis signed his massive contract. And this must be frightening for other NBA teams. Because LeBron, who's always been more Magic Johnson than Michael Jordan, even though we always discuss this Michael LeBron thing, we may have to open up that MJ-LeBron debate this morning. Talk about that coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Are you dealing with best life burnout, constantly striving for more, and quite frankly, over it? Maybe you just want more joy, peace, and laughter in your life now. Well then let's go. Welcome to your new favorite podcast, Hot Happy Mess, hosted by me, your girl, Zuri Hall. Join us each week as we discuss dating, relationships, self-care, career wins and losses, and so much more. Oh, and moments like this. You know what? Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side because it's fake.
Well, that's why I mentioned muting. There are some people who will check you.
Oh, we got some petty people in our lives. I was crying by the water because I was happy.
And I do love a clear.
Not liquor. Wine will be spilled, laughs will be had, and a few tears might be shed. Messes will be made, but we're gonna find our magic in the middle of them. Don't miss new episodes every Monday. Find Hot Happy Mess on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In the summer and autumn of 2020, the city of Portland, Oregon became the center of a vast media blitz. Thousands of viral videos showing marching federal agents and police officers, tear gas, black-clad anarchists and fires went viral all over the internet. What didn't go viral was the truth, because the story of Portland's Black Lives Matter movement and of the Portland protests of 2020 is so much stranger than I think the mainstream media would ever be willing to cover. I was there, and more importantly, the people that I talked to for my new show, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, were there. Through their experiences, you'll learn the truth, both about Portland and about what's coming for the rest of the United States in the next few years. Listen to Uprising, A Guide from Portland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Want to stream what you love in one place? Introducing Discovery Plus, a new streaming service bringing you the greatest collection of real-life entertainment, favorite brands, plus exclusive originals, starting in early 2021. U.S. only. So Anthony Davis of the Lakers finalized a 5-year, $190 million maximum contract to stay with the Lakers. LeBron did it earlier in the day. And, this is the reality of basketball. You have certain conflicts in basketball. that you don't have in football for a variety of reasons. The basketball culture has always been a little more worship and star-driven, and so, players are feeling themselves. Also in the NBA, guys get to the league earlier. They have these massive shoe deals, so they're just worshipped by fans. They're worshipped by, shoe companies. It's just a reality of the culture of the NBA is different, and it's fine. It succeeds, and the NFL's got a different culture where you're not getting paid. You're going to college probably for 4 years. You're going to get beat up. The coach is going to yell at you, and even if you're Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, you could be cut. It's just a different league and a different culture. And because of that, the NBA, it's a delicate, you walk on eggshells a little with your stars. How many of them don't get along? Embiid and Simmons do not get along. Westbrook and Harden didn't work. Westbrook and Durant didn't work. Harden and Chris Paul didn't work. KD and Draymond didn't work. Kyrie and everybody didn't work. Jimmy Butler didn't work in Chicago, Philadelphia, and Minnesota. Paul George and the rest of the Clippers, according to the Athletic story yesterday, didn't get along. A lot of drama, a lot of chaos with stars. This is another reason. This is another thing that LeBron is way better than Michael Jordan at. LeBron's very much like Magic. He gets along with everybody. That doesn't mean he loves all of his coaches, but he wins with all of them. Michael Jordan fought with friends. He dumped Charles Barkley. Michael Jordan fought with coaches. He fought with opponents. He fought with teammates. He punched teammates. I mean, you watch that documentary, it was just an enemies list. And by the way, Michael's great, but Michael built up walls and borders and fences, and Michael kept people at bay. Even now, he's kind of private. He keeps people at a distance. He's got a tight circle of friends, and that's it, and nobody penetrates it. That's his personality. LeBron's more like Magic. He works with everybody. He works with stars. He worked with Bosh. He worked with Love. He worked with D-Wade. The only one he hasn't worked with, and oh, by the way, he won a title with him, Kyrie Irving. So they worked for a while, but Kyrie left, and Kyrie has been, I think this is fair, difficult to get along with a lot of people. But Michael, this is the difference. Michael burns, and you heard this during the documentary, Michael burns people out. He just is so tireless and so intense and so relentless, he burned people out. In fact, Michael burned himself out. He retired twice. Michael burned Michael out. LeBron is happy. And this is what's scary for the NBA. LeBron and Anthony Davis are the couple everybody else is jealous of. They get along better than you, and they work better than you. I mean, do you really think KD and Kyrie are going to be together in 4 years? Embiid and Simmons are going to be together in 2? John Wall and Harden? I mean, let's be honest about this. From day one, LeBron and Anthony Davis worked perfectly. It was insane. We would go on this show, Joey and I, and be like, wait a minute, it's a whole new team. Even D-Wade and LeBron, best friends, took 17 games. They were like 8-9 or 9 or 8, and it was clunky. There were a lot of times that LeBron and D-Wade and Bosh, it felt like, well, you're marginalizing Bosh, and D-Wade and LeBron do the same thing, and it's Wade County, and LeBron and AD were like brothers, best friends, game 2. And, you start looking at all these teams putting these stars together, and there's an article yesterday in The Athletic that, that Paul George Kawhi thing, we didn't think it was great. It was way worse than that. You start putting these stars together, LeBron's not only a better player, he's got more self-awareness, he's a better teammate. It's got to be discouraging for the rest of the NBA. Here's Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, everyone is assuming that the Cowboys are committed to Dak Prescott as their franchise quarterback.
Oh, I don't even know what this story is, and I'm already interested.
Going forward. But one Pro Football Focus analyst is proposing another idea for the future of the position. The Cowboys currently have the 4th pick in the draft. And the idea is that they could trade Dak and that first-round pick to the Jets to get the 1st overall pick.
I wouldn't do that.
And then the Cowboys would be in line to draft Trevor Lawrence.
Well, it'd be great for Fox Sports and the league.
It'd be amazing. It'd be amazing.
Was this leaked by Pro Football Focus or our bosses? I'm like, who leaked this story?
I don't think it's a story. I think it's just an idea. Like, because the Cowboys currently have the 4th overall
So I could get Trevor Lawrence, who's going to cost nothing, or Dak, who's going to cost a lot, who I don't think is as good as Trevor Lawrence.
Well, so for the Jets, they would obviously move off of Sam Darnold, so
Yes.
they'd get another first-round pick, and they'd have the Cowboys' fourth pick, and Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I don't. I no.
So you'd have a proven quarterback, who I think everyone at this point certainly thinks is better than Sam Darnold.
Yes, he's been better. Yes.
And you'd have two first-round
Well,
picks.
they don't need draft capital. The Jets got nothing but picks. What they need is players. They have a zillion picks.
But
so
I mean, they could package those picks for other players.
I'd like to get this Pro Football Focus person identified. This feels like what our marketing department did
I mean, it's very exciting.
for us.
It's
Yes.
very exciting to imagine. I don't think there's any chance of this happening. I think the Jets are going to take Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is not going to force his way out of New York, because force yourself to where? Like, you'd have to find a situation that is more ideal than New York. And if you're looking at the other teams that need quarterbacks, the current draft order, Jets, Jags, Bengals, Cowboys, Chargers, and Eagles round out the top six. So, you want to force your way to Jacksonville?
No, I think I know, as long as the Jets and Jags and the Bengals keep losing, I absolutely believe I know what the first three picks of I think Trevor Lawrence, Jets, Justin Fields, Jags, and Penei Sewell, Bengals. All three of those are great fits. Then you get into the Dallas at 4. What I would do if I was Dallas, I would just trade down, because what I'm looking for is more picks, cheaper labor. Because they're not going to take a quarterback, even though I would. Dallas is not taking a quarterback. They're going to stick with Dak. That's fine. What Dallas needs is, like, players, because they're so top-heavy. They need...
And if they stick with Dak, they're going to have to pay him $40 million.
That's right. Like, this is what Seattle did a couple years ago when they signed the Russell Wilson contract. They had 4 picks. They turned it into 11 picks before the draft. It's like, okay, we got to get inexpensive on the defensive side. And so that's what Dallas needs to do with Seattle. Trade that number 4 pick. By the way, it's going to be a great... Jerry's a deal maker. So there's going to be 4 to 5 teams calling on that Dallas Cowboy pick. Because if I'm Cincinnati, I don't move, because I have maybe I do. It's a good offensive line. I think both the Bengals and Cowboys potentially will take phone calls and move.
I thought there was going to be a lot more movement in this draft than there was.
I know,
too.
but this draft has 5 quarterbacks first round. 2 are stars. I think we're going to have a crazy draft.
I hope so. This one did not have the movement that I thought it was going to, even though it did turn out to be a great draft. So the Chargers haven't officially been eliminated from the playoffs yet, but their chances are slim, sitting at the bottom of the AFC West. And Anthony Lynn says he's being realistic with his team on what they are really playing for these last few games.
You know, we talked about today, we don't plan for each other. You know, the playoff hunt is probably not going to happen at this point. 8-8's the best we can do, and I don't think that's going to be good enough. But we play for each other, and we play for the love of the game.
Well, Anthony Lynn's record with the Chargers is 29-30. A losing record would be the team's second in a row after going 21-11 and winning a playoff game over Anthony Lynn's first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So whether or not he gets a 5th season is kind of going to be dependent on how much they consider those first 2 seasons. We talked about this yesterday. The Chargers are in LA. They're in a market that is completely saturated, not with teams, not with entertainment, but high-level teams.
All winning
with lots of stars.
And they have to sell tickets, and they're giving away tickets.
Yes, well, as of right now, nobody's worried about tickets, but they will be eventually, and they're going to need something that is going to get people there. Now, I think Justin Herbert's done an amazing job, so they know that they have a star in him.
And
I would go watch him.
They also have a world-class pass rusher in Joey Bosa. Like, they have a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, they have lots of great players and fun players and talent. Are they going to be able to put it all together is the question, and this year has been a huge disappointment. And obviously it didn't start the way they thought it would. They thought they were going to have Tyrod Taylor, but Justin Herbert's been amazing. I don't know if Anthony Lynn is there next year, and I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but I also don't know how much, similar to college football, not for the money reasons that are in college football, I don't know how many changes like that, dramatic changes, are going to happen around the NFL, other than the teams that, like, obviously the Falcons that have been, consistent for a while.
I mean, whether it's fair or not, I just think the Chargers will make a move. I think what happens in the NFL, you can sense momentum. Like right now, you're like, Giants, good momentum. Dolphins, good momentum. Carolina losing, good momentum.
Yeah.
Chargers, bad momentum. And I think when you have bad momentum, you got to move off it. Bill O'Brien won a lot of division titles, but when it started this year, 0-4, you're like, okay, Bill was winning, and we knew he wasn't a good GM, but the momentum turned, and, Dave Wanstead always says this. You can lose a game, you can't lose a locker room.
Yeah.
And if you start losing these close games after a while, you start losing the trust, the momentum.
Well, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy after a while. So, the Browns are on a 3-game winning streak and are in a great position to make the playoffs with an 8-3 record, but Baker Mayfield also hasn't thrown an interception in the last 4 games.
That's good.
But he's not satisfied with how he has been playing.
I'm very critical of my play. It's just, I pride myself on being an accurate passer, and I didn't do that. So, I'm going to beat myself up about that because I know I can be better. And it pisses me off when I don't do the things I need to. I'm trying to get better each week, and that's taking care of the ball, and that's completing these passes that should be made in my sleep.
Yeah, he's right.
I don't know what to make of the Browns. I don't want to be extra critical because they are playing great and they deserve the credit, and I think Stefanski's done an amazing job.
I think we all know what they are.
Yeah, I just feel like
they'll have the worst quarterback in the playoffs, and that means they're not going to last long. I mean, if you start looking at quarterbacks that are going to make it, low-end guy would be to some like Derek Carr. Well, Derek Carr's better than Baker Mayfield. Like right now, by far.
I just feel about them the way that I feel about the Titans, but I feel better about the Titans than I do about the Browns.
Yes.
They go as their running game goes, both these teams, but if they have to rely on their quarterback, I'm going to trust Ryan Tannehill more than I'm going to trust Baker Mayfield.
And that's absolutely what you should do, because Ryan's a better quarterback. And this is not a shot at Baker, but I think actually, almost more than any team, I think we know what Cleveland is. They have to play a certain way to win.
They're a limited team, but
limited.
That's just an evaluation. Like, everything's not a criticism. That's just an evaluation of what they are.
Yeah, that's what they are.
They should be completely happy with it. They should be thrilled with this season. They're having an amazing season. Yeah. And Stefanski is completely righted the ship there. And it seems like he is finally establishing a culture in Cleveland, which is what they needed. Yes.
They don't talk. They're not chatty all the time.
They're exactly what Cleveland should be.
Yeah. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
And it's really funny with Baker, because when Baker came into the league, everybody compared him to Drew Brees. And I'm like, no, Tua's Drew Brees, but Baker's not that accurate of a thrower. I didn't buy it. I watched Oklahoma and Baker play Georgia. I'm like, when rushed, he's not that accurate of a thrower. I compared him to Case Keenum. And everybody said, whoa! That's unbelievable! As a shot at Baker Mayfield. Case Keenum won like 11 games in Minnesota when he had a very conservative run-first coach and Kevin Stefanski as a coordinator with a bunch of good offensive pieces around him. That's what Case Keenum did. That's what Baker's doing. He is Case Keenum. Now, I think he has a better, stronger arm, but he's not any better athlete. He's not any bigger. I don't think he's been any better at the line of scrimmage. This was my prototype. So Stefanski took Case Keenum. He was the offensive coordinator, and they had a bunch of good pieces, right? And they won like 11 games, and they were a playoff team. But you always felt there was a real ceiling. This is exactly what Stefanski has done. He's created this running game. There's a very low ceiling, but you have a coach that, Minnesota doesn't yap a lot. Browns don't yap a lot. It's a very solid culture. And so I always felt with that Case Keenum team, I'm like, fun, but, not going to go to they can't win multiple playoff games. And that's what I feel about Cleveland. Peter King in about 10 minutes. This is interesting to me. So, when you win in the NFL, it's like, remember that thing whiteout? If you were typing and they had whiteout, it's like LeBron's the human eraser. If you have problems, like LeBron just sort of erases all that. Winning is sort of the solution to all your like drama and problems. The Miami Dolphins are winning. Tua, I just want to throw this out. In his first month as a starter, Tua was benched and got hurt. Nobody's talking about it. He got benched and he got hurt. Hurt in high school, hurt in college. Oh boy, hurt in the pros. And his passing totals for Tua in the first 4 games are 93 yards, 248, 109, and 83. Or is it 169? He's averaging under 150 yards per start. And whereas there's a lot of wow with these young quarterbacks. Kyler Murray's legs, wow. Lamar Jackson's speed, wow. Josh Allen's size and arm. Wow. Justin Herbert's arm and everything. Wow. With Tua and like a Dak Prescott, it is, well, they're winning. And that's something. But Miami is in a very interesting place. And I want you to, for a second. You're Brian Flores. You run the team. So, by April, late April, the Jets are going to have Trevor Lawrence. Wow! The Bills already have Josh Allen. Wow! And Belichick's the best coach in football. You will have Tua. And Tua's strengths, and this is not arguable, the two things we know about him at every level. Accurate, and he gets hurt. Now, accuracy matters. It is something. And Brian Flores may be thinking, hey, my defense, I'm a better defensive coach than everybody in this league except Belichick. I just want an accurate guy who doesn't turn it over. I want Drew Brees. I don't need wow. I don't need massive arm. But it's a very interesting situation because Miami has Houston's first round pick, and Houston just lost their wide receiver and corner to like PEDs. So Houston's going to be really bad for the next month, despite Deshaun Watson. What does that mean? Miami may have the 5th or 6th pick in this draft. That's the last time Brian Flores is going to have a top 5 or 6 pick. This is it. And it is a awesome quarterback draft. This is why I believe you play Tua. You're not going to have the 5th or 6th pick in the draft. Brian Flores is too good of a coach. He's built too good of a defense. They got too much momentum. And they're getting more. I mean, they have draft capital, endless draft capital. So it's a fascinating place. Does Brian Flores look at this and think to himself, okay, here's what I know with Tua. He doesn't throw picks. He didn't throw them in high school. He threw 11 picks at Alabama total. He doesn't throw them in the NFL. And he thinks there's not a lot of wow there, but I get Drew Brees, I get accurate, I get no mistakes, and I can win with defense. But just remember, by late April, Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen are in your division, with each about a 12 to 15-year runway. That's what if you stay in Miami for 15 years, you will have the smaller, less of an arm, arguably less mobile quarterback. It's fascinating, and you have a draft pick from Houston you may never have again in your career. You know, Patriots don't draft top 3 very often. It just doesn't happen. So, kind of fascinating. Tua in his first month, benched and hurt, and nobody's talking about it. Like you can't tell me they're not thinking about it. This is why you can win with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I would put Tua out there, even if it costs me a game. Put him out there. All right, coming up next. All my years doing it, there's something happening I have never seen. In fact, I've not only never seen it, I can't even compare it to anything. That, plus Greg Cosell, top of the hour. NFL Meat Sandwich coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Personal growth is challenging, but it doesn't have to be hard. When we lean into self-inquiry and self-discovery, we're able to love all the tiny little parts of us, even the pieces we don't want other people to know about. And that's what it's really about, right? Self-love, self-acceptance, self-discovery, excavation, expansion. We are the powerful co-creators of our lives. All we need are the tools to get there. I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect. And I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. New season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You already know that The Challenge is the most heart-pounding competition show on television. But do you ever wonder how challenge competitors are selected or which challenges were too dangerous for TV? Well, you can learn all that and so much more on MTV's official Challenge podcast. Hosted by your girl Tori and me, Anissa. We're giving you the inside scoop on the brand new season of The Challenge. Let's go, baby. Listen to MTV's official Challenge podcast starting on December 10th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Greg Cosell, NFL Films. If you bet football, fantasy football, or just love football, he's our NFL meat sandwich, and he will be joining us at the top of hour number 2. Chris Broussard today as well. So, big story in the NBA yesterday. Anthony Davis finalized his deal with the Lakers. That means Giannis is not coming out here, and that's better. I think LeBron, AD, they should win it, but let's make it interesting. You don't want to get Durant, Steph, and Clay, which is fun for about a year. Then afterwards, it did not help NBA ratings. It felt like nobody else was relevant. So, and LeBron just signed his contract. So, and the Lakers are overwhelming favorites. But we all, what I'm about to say, we all know. And I started noticing this probably about 15 years ago. Not like I noticed it or Joy noticed it. Everybody noticed that sports athletes were ending up on the cover of GQ. They were in movies. Maybe Michael Jordan started it. Athletes always did like Gatorade commercials or McDonald's commercials, but you started seeing like Michael Jordan in a movie, and people went and saw the movie. And then Shaq was in movies, and you start seeing guys doing, it's hip hop stuff, it's movies. There's this, they transcend sports. Like athletes are now on the cover of non-sports magazines, right? So we know there's been this melting of like Hollywood athletes, and it's been happening for a long time. And it's just happening more and more because there's more money in sports. I remember a couple years ago when Steve Ballmer bought the Clippers, and he bought it for $2 billion, and people freaked out. And I'm like, well, he bought it cash, and he's not going to sell it. It's going to be worth $10 billion in 30 years. Who gives a rip? He's got enough money, he can't keep all his money in Microsoft stock. Like, who cares? Everything's growing. The safest place in the world right now to put your money is literally in sports teams. Like the richest people in LA, LeBron and Stan Kroenke, they own like parts of Liverpool in the English Premier League. Like that's where all the rich people. You can't put it in stock markets. Real estate's got bubble. Where do you put it? The Boston Red Sox are going to be in Boston in 40 years. Liverpool's going to be over in the EPL in 40 years. So this thing is just exploding. Sports is exploding. It's the only thing that anybody watches on TV now. Is literally politics and sports and news. That is it. So. But what is happening in Los Angeles, and obviously LA is different than other cities, it's the entertainment capital of the world. It's really benefiting Los Angeles. Nobody cares here about, the rich guys don't care about their taxes or they wouldn't move here. Right now in Los Angeles, this is unprecedented. This town's always had stars. They've got the best player in all the sports. So here's the 10 best professional athletes today in Los Angeles. LeBron, and let's just think about this. LeBron's number 1. He's the world's best basketball player. Aaron Donald or Patrick Mahomes is the best football player in the world. Aaron Donald, voted on by players more than once, has won it. Aaron Donald, I'd say number 2. Mike Trout is overwhelmingly considered the best baseball player in the world, 3. Anthony Davis, after this bubble, maybe the second best basketball player in the world. They have him. Oh, and Mookie Betts, number 5, is also the second best baseball player in the world. Kawhi Leonard's arguably the third best basketball player in the world. And then there's 4 guys who maybe not the best player in the world, but Joey Bosa for the Chargers is what everybody in the NFL wants. Unblockable. Cody Bellinger is a former MVP. Jalen Ramsey's probably the NFL's most physical corner and has transformed the defense. And Walker Buehler has an argument as the best young arm in baseball. But here's how much talent is in Los Angeles. 3 people didn't make the list. Clayton Kershaw, this generation's Sandy Koufax, I would put at 11. Now, I would have put him top 5 3 years ago, but he's older now. He's not the ace. At number 12, I put in Paul George. He's a 6-time All-Star with his own shoe line. At 13, I put Justin Herbert, who appears to be like Andrew Luck with a better arm. Like, LA's always had stars. And the other thing is, most of these guys outside of LeBron are like babies. They're like 25 and 26 years old. Walker Buehler, Mookie Betts isn't that old. Just think about this. New York City is the biggest, it's the most powerful city in America, right? Who's their number 1? Kevin Durant hasn't played a game yet. Aaron Judge can't stay healthy. Jacob deGrom wouldn't be recognized on a subway in New York. New York? Who's your one? Who's your two? Who's your three? Who's your four? It is unbelievable the level of talent. And I think a lot of it is just you get noticed here. You know, it used to be, oh, the weather's good here. I think it's all about, like when LeBron James showed up in Los Angeles. Remember this. Philadelphia had a much better roster. Houston had much better players. The Lakers were a mess. And I'm close to people that are close to LeBron. It was hey, this brand, this business, and we've seen LeBron within like 9 months. Movies, TV shows, he'll own his own network soon, pizza chains. So I know most people hate Los Angeles and love to bang on Los Angeles, but I'll tell you who likes it. Pro athletes. And they're all winning. The Dodgers are winning, the Clippers are winning, the Lakers are winning, LAFC's winning, everybody's winning.
But the taxes.
Taxes! Listen, nobody likes taxes. Move to New Hampshire and Wyoming.
I love paying taxes.
If I have to hear that again. Oh, the taxes. Okay,
I mean, they're ridiculous. Okay, but like no one likes paying taxes. Guess what? Guess what you're gonna do for the rest of your life? You're gonna pay taxes. Doesn't matter who the politicians are or where you live. You're gonna pay some taxes. But there's something about Los Angeles. You don't understand it until you get here.
No. So it's very funny about this, and not just because we live here. Los Angeles. In New York, if you're rich, it's difficult. New York is hard. The weather's hard. The summers are humid. The winters are rough. You're on a football-shaped island. You can only build vertically. You're jammed. In Los Angeles, the stars all live in Malibu in their own little colony out there. You can't get through the gate. Los Angeles is the biggest county. I think Jacksonville County and LA County. It's all spread out. There's five. You can live on the beach. You can live in the city. You can live out in the burbs. You can live up in Santa Barbara. You can live down in Malibu. You can hide in Los Angeles. You can just, it's just...
No, the quality of life here is very different. It's expensive, but it's not stopped any rich people from living here for generations, and it's not stopping superstars from coming here.
No. And by the way, our politicians drive us crazy. They drive us nuts, and our taxes are no good. We don't like those either. But there has never been a time in American history where a city had the best basketball, the best football, the best baseball, the second best baseball, the second best basketball, the third best basketball. We're showing pictures of Los Angeles. What can I say?
There's been cities that have had Boston, obviously.
They had
win championships, but when you're talking about
star
stars,
power, it's insane. And by the way, this is also a city. Boston is not star friendly. Manny didn't like being there. Kevin Garnett did. Ray Allen didn't like. A lot of stars don't like being in Boston. They're like not into it. This is an easy place to live if you're a big star. You can go high. Kawhi lives in San Diego and the late Kobe he lived down in Orange County. He lived like an hour away from. You can just hide in Southern California.
Or not, if that's not what you're into.
That's right. You go be front and center. Hills, topography, canyons. There's everywhere you want to live. So. I feel like a Chamber of Commerce commercial, but we were sitting there this morning, and after the AD LeBron contract, I was like, it's incredible. It's just insane.
Well, I just think that there's something still to the cities, right? Like, and listen, I know we sound like coastal elitists and whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Maybe we are.
Yeah, maybe we are.
But this is our experience. So to me, you can still see that there is a value to being in these big cities. Like, if you are a star. There just is. Look at the Christmas Day lineup. Look what we were just talking about. Like this, if you're in LA, like it's a different situation. If you're in Dallas, even if you're in New York, like it's Miami, it still matters. It does.
No state gets criticized more, but yet attracts more people in sports, in tech, in business than Los Angeles. So it's like all I know is this morning when I wake up, it is. And it's always had this reputation they don't care about sports. The Dodgers draw $5 million a year. They care about sports. And why wouldn't they? Everybody's good. They don't even like USC's coach right now. They're unbeaten. Everybody's good in the city. Greg Cosell, NFL Meat Sandwich, right around the corner on a Thursday. No Thursday Night Football tonight. What a bummer. It's the Herd.
You've probably heard a lot about Portland on the news, about the tear gas and the federal agents with snatch vans and the anarchy. What you probably haven't heard is the truth, because the reality of what happened in Portland is so much stranger, so much more incredible than what the mainstream media was willing to show. I'm Robert Evans, and along with all of the other voices on my podcast, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, I was there. Listen to Uprising, A Guide from Portland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, a hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Your cases are waiting for you. New episodes of Solve are available now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. One crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
My name is Lowell Berlanti, and I created the podcast Prodigy to find the answer to a very complicated question. Can genius be created? I asked academics, researchers, scientists, and the prodigies themselves to gain a better understanding of intelligence, skill acquisition, and expert performance. So disregard all simple explanations, because complex questions require complex answers. Listen to Prodigy every Thursday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Oh, here we go. It is hour 2 on a Thursday. We are live in Los Angeles. This is the Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. You know, it's funny, when I used to work at another company, they dribbled up. I don't know what happened to them. But when I used to work for the other company, probably the first time you ever heard of me, Joy Taylor's joining me. This show's called The Herd. I'm the Herd guy. And so this company, it's 15 years ago almost today, 15, 16 years ago, I got hired by another big company, right? And when I came in, I was a West Coast guy.
Right.
So ESPN had a bunch of East Coast guys. Everybody was from the East. And I remember when I first worked there, I said, I got nothing against Pittsburgh, but it's basically northern West Virginia. Why doesn't anybody ever talk about, like, Los Angeles and San Francisco and Seattle?
Oh, how dare you.
And everybody was like, whoa. So I started doing radio on ESPN, and I hit in Los Angeles. And I remember people used to come up to me all over the country in airports. Everywhere I was at. This was for like 10 years. And they used to thank me. This was like a thing. They'd be like, hey, I just appreciate you acknowledging the West Coast exists. Because before you, it was Mike and all these shows. And they were just like literally, there was nothing west of the Mississippi. Maybe Chicago. And so so when I do a 10-minute segment on LA, it's like, yeah, that's what I do. That's my jam. That's what I roll. Like, we matter out here. Like, these stars, all athletes have homes out here. Even if they don't play, they have homes out here.
Well, I guess
I'm not going to spend all day talking about Indianapolis.
I mean, so I grew up in Pittsburgh, which is, what did you call it? Northern West Virginia?
Yeah.
It is not. Pittsburgh's the East Coast. Don't at me either. It is.
They put French fries on their hamburgers.
We put French fries on our salads.
Okay, so it's not really the East Coast.
But I will say though, if you've grown up somewhere like that and you lived your life there, California and Los Angeles feels, it's like it might as well be
Australia.
Another country. Yes, it's so far away. It's just not. It just is. Like New York, Philly, Miami. Those feels like,
Here's the other thing.
In the same time zone.
All my friends out west have been to New York because for business.
Right.
When I moved to ESPN, people like 45-year-old men had never been to Seattle, Denver. Like Ryan Russillo's a buddy of mine. He always jokes about it. He's from Boston. And he's like, he and Bill Simmons are from Boston. They both live in L.A. right around where I live. Russillo's like a neighbor. And he always jokes, Russillo, to his credit, always says, all these Boston guys are like, why would you ever leave? And he's like, you never have. You don't know what it's like. It's called no winter.
It's a whole
They have no.
thing.
They think like Martha's Vineyard is going to Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I went to LA twice before I moved here, and it was only because Jason was on Dancing with the Stars. So I had the privilege of coming out and seeing him in the show, and didn't even really go around LA like that. Like the furthest west I'd ever been is Kansas when he was playing them in college.
Right.
I get no concept of the West Coast.
I never feel I have to apologize for Los Angeles.
No, there's lots of people that live here. Like
10 million people in our county.
Yes, California's a big place.
Yeah. Let's go to Greg Cosell, NFL Meat Sandwich, NFL Films, 41 years. There, if you bet it, if you do fantasy, if you love football, he's my favorite. He is now joining us live. By the way, just thinking something off the top of my head. Years ago, you and I were at San Diego.
Yeah.
You remember the Steve Clark's camp?
Without question, I remember well.
And I asked you, and to your credit, I said, Greg, I'm going to lean on you. I watched Mitch Trubisky. I do not understand it. And you said to me, he's a front leg thrower. This is probably not going to be great. You were way early on. Everybody was falling in love with him. And you said, Colin, I've looked at tape. Front leg thrower, the ball's going to die. And nobody, I always refer to that if I talk to scouts. I'm like, Cosell told me. So to your credit, now I want to talk about another quarterback who I think is more talented, but he is struggling. It is Lamar Jackson, and I've said, can he break through whatever this is? People get film, they throw stuff at you. If you're Baltimore, what would concern you about Lamar?
Well, I think where you have to get to with Lamar, and I've always believed this. I believe, and Bill Walsh was the one who taught me this, really, Colin. You have to get to a point where your pass game and your run game can work independently of one another. And what happens in the NFL, because there's really smart coaches, is they figure out how to better defend the multi-dimensional run game of the Ravens. As good as Greg Roman is, and he may be as good as there is in designing run game concepts, but defensive coordinators figure it out. So now you have to be able to throw the football, and you have to be able to throw the football independent of all those run game concepts in any given game. So now you get to a drop-back passing game in which you have to be able to understand your concepts in complete detail and understand defensive concepts in complete detail. That's how quarterbacks are able to eliminate what's not there quickly and isolate what is there quickly within the structure of the offense and a comfort level in the pocket. He is not at that point. So what happens is, because he's always been able to rely on his legs, is he now moves prematurely. He leaves the pocket prematurely at times, and yes, he'll make some special runs because he's that special, but he will also leave a lot of throws on the field that are there.
Kansas City can win multiple ways. They can win finesse, they can win power. That is generally rare. Generally, there's ways teams can win. And the Browns-Titans play this week. And they do feel like there's a certain formula for them to win. The running game's excelling. And I think Tennessee is a better version of Cleveland. What does the film say?
Well, you hit it right on the head. They're mirror images of each other philosophically. But I think you're right that overall, the Titans' pass game is better than Cleveland's, more consistent. But both those teams still have to figure out just what I said about the Ravens, how they can throw the football if the run game is not the driving force. I think that Tannehill has shown over the last number of weeks he's done a much better job off the run game of getting to, let's say, his second read, which becomes critical because teams understand where do you want to go with the football off your play action pass game, and often they'll take it away. So they'll take away, for instance, A.J. Brown on a lot of those in-breakers at times. Then you've got to go somewhere else. And Tannehill's done a better job of that in recent weeks. For instance, hitting Corey Davis, who's become a little more of a volume target in the past 2-3 games, but not as the number one primary on those plays. So they've done a better job of that. Right now, Baker Mayfield is still struggling. He's very inconsistent. You can see he plays very fast. There's a frenetic movement to him. But then he'll also make 2 or 3 throws a game that remind us all why he was the number one pick when he came out of Oklahoma. And so he's still trying to figure out how to be more composed, more comfortable in the pocket, and play just with a little more poise.
There are things that are correctable, and there are things as a quarterback that are not. Jared Goff is in a really bad stretch of turnovers, fumbles, and interceptions. And I've always felt with Goff that when he's comfortable, he's very good. When he's uncomfortable, he's a liability. Are his flaws, Jared Goff, are they correctable?
I would say in answer to that Jared Goff is kind of what he is, and I think we all know what he is. I think he's a programmed quarterback who is very system-based. And again, most quarterbacks are. That is not a pejorative negative statement, but he is really like that. So when the system works, and McVay has a phenomenal system, and he can drop back and be comfortable in the pocket, and he gets what he expects coverage-wise, which comes from coaching and play calling, then he looks really good because he throws the ball really well. When he doesn't get that for whatever reason, it could be coverage-based. The Niners did some great things in coverage this week. And Jimmy Ward, by the way, is a really overlooked player in the Niners defense, but they did some really good things in coverage. When he gets pressure where he's not comfortable in the pocket, then his efficiency drops. He's not going to become a different player, Colin. This is who he is. So he becomes very much a function of the scheme.
I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers because I don't really care about awards. I'd give him my MVP. I don't think he's as good as Mahomes, but I think he's more valuable to his team. So Matt LaFleur comes in, and I thought Matt LaFleur was very good in the first half last year, but young coaches often aren't great after intermission. That's where the Belichicks and Pete Carrolls are. This year, I think Green Bay's done a better job, although they've had some clunkers in the second half, of, making adjustments at half. But I will say this. This year, this is the second year with Matt LaFleur. Last year, you could argue, well, he's no better than he was with Mike McCarthy, so it wasn't about Matt LaFleur. This year, Aaron looks much more comfortable to me.
Yeah.
What are you seeing with him and LaFleur? That's just what it looks like for me. The body language is mostly better. Why is he so comfortable?
And you're 100% right, Colin. And think of this. What are we not seeing as much this year with Rodgers that we've become used to seeing? Him running around and leaving the pocket. We're seeing way less of that. This offense now, this pass game, is a very desirable combination of being highly schemed, where they win with the route concepts, but also Rodgers being very aggressive when he sees one-on-ones. Because when he sees one-on-ones, whether it's on the outside or whether it's, let's say, in the slot, if it's man coverage, he's going to throw that ball. But yet, they're also very schemed, and you see a lot of plays where the design, the concept wins. The touchdown we're seeing right here to Robert Tonyan is a great example of that. So this is now a really good mix. I know people like to say, for whatever it means, that, Rodgers has bought in. I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know what's in Aaron Rodgers' head. I can only tell you that the film shows that this offense is really well schemed, but yet Rodgers will be willing to turn it loose anytime he sees those one-on-ones.
So now I want to go to Brady on this because I said this week, we looked at his numbers, 28 TDs, 11 picks, 94 passer rating, 65 data, blah, blah, blah. And I said, listen, considering Evans was hurt early, so was Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard leaves, Fournette came right before the season, new coach, new system. I'm like, maybe we're being ridiculous here. He leads the NFL, I believe, in completions. Only Mahomes, only a few of the stars have more yards. And I'm like, are we overanalyzing this? Is Brady actually having a pretty darn good year. Like, what does the film say?
Well, it's a different offense. He's very used to an offense that's very rhythmic based in terms of quick game type throws. 3-step drops, bang play action, 5-step drops, ball comes out. This is a little bit of a different offense in terms of the vertical element to it. And by vertical, I don't mean throwing the ball 40, 50 yards down the field. So what that means, Colin, is it means you're in the pocket for just a bit longer. Think of it this way, and the audience will be able to appreciate this. 3-step timing is 1.5 seconds, the ball's out. 5-step timing is 2.1 seconds. 7-step timing is 2.6 seconds. So when you start getting into more of the 5-step and the 7-step timing, you're just in the pocket longer. And that changes the timing and it changes your mental clock. So there's more of those deeper kinds of throws in this offense. And the offensive line has been a little bit of an up and down struggle this year, and he's been under a little more duress because the ball doesn't necessarily come out as quick within the structure of this style of offense. So while he's not had a bad year, there's been more what we would call negative plays that we're not used to seeing when he was in New England.
I want to talk about the Steelers. Obviously, in the NFL, Seattle and the New York Giants, I think, are better today than Week 2. I think the Bears and the Niners and the Steelers are worse than Week 2 or 3. Teams ebb and flow, right? Some of it with Pittsburgh is now Bud Dupree's now out for the year. Devin Bush is out. 2 really, really high-end linebackers out. And I watched them last night, but I want to talk about the running game specifically. You would have never wanted Big Ben at this point in his career to throw 51 times against RG3 in a MASH unit in Baltimore. They can't.
By choice. They didn't have to do that. That was by choice.
So let me ask you, is their run game... Why can't the Steelers? They have very good offensive line. You can't crowd the box because Ben will beat you deep. They have good receivers.
Right.
What is up with their running game? What is it?
Well, by choice, they're having Ben drop back an awful lot, Colin. You know, earlier in the season, there was a 3 or 4 week stretch where James Conner, and I know he's on the COVID list, and hopefully he gets back okay, but there was a 3 or 4 week stretch where James Conner was very effective. He was averaging 17, 18 carries a game. Their run game looked pretty solid. Then he had a couple of games where it wasn't that good, and then it seems like they've totally abandoned it. I mean, look, what's sustainable and what's not sustainable is always open to debate with smart, reasonable people. To me, you don't want Ben Roethlisberger dropping back by choice 45, 50 times in a game.
Yes.
Now, a lot of their pass game is very quick game now and short. They do take their shots, but they try to get the ball out of Ben's hands pretty quickly. But I think they're going to need some kind of run game. I don't want to throw out the word balance because that's a cliche and it can mean many different things to many different teams. But I just don't think 50 dropbacks by choice is something you want to do every week.
Finally, our big play. Let's just talk Mahomes. Every great quarterback has a unique quality to them. Mahomes has something that I don't think I've ever seen. The back pedal, where he'll take a long, and he'll just keep, because he has so much confidence in his arm, he just keeps backpedaling. He just waits for the receiver to break. It's special to watch, and you saw it. I do wonder if Kansas City sometimes, because they score so brilliantly and quickly, if they're not urgent enough at times with their series. I guess it's a Golden State Warrior problem. When you can score so fast, you can score so fast, you don't always play with urgency. But let's talk a little about Mahomes.
Well, he's pretty good. I mean, we spoke about Rodgers earlier. I mean, I think you can easily make the case that Rodgers and Mahomes are the 2 best throwers in the game, and Mahomes is truly, truly special, and he's just one of those guys. There's really not a whole lot more to say about him, and of course he's getting better mentally the more he plays, and I think he's one of those guys that really understands how important that part of the game is, and certainly Andy Reid does, but he is just absolutely special as a thrower. And we're seeing him here throw. This was the first touchdown to Tyreek Hill. The play I want to show was actually the second touchdown to Tyreek Hill. And we can end up, and this is it right now. So let's actually take a look at this and we can break it down. So this was the second touchdown that we're talking about to Tyreek Hill. And this was something they do very, very often and they do very, very well. And what they do here is they line up in what we call a 1-by-3 set. And we call it a 1-by-3, not a 3-by-1, because it's the tight end who's the single receiver to the boundary side of the field opposite the trips. And here what the Bucs show, they show Two deep coverage, two-man coverage, two deep safeties, and man-to-man across the board. But they will rotate to cover one, a single high man coverage with that safety taking the bat. What's the matchup here? It's Tyreek Hill, Carlton Davis. And they love when Hill is in the inside slot to trips to run this deep over route. They'll run it against man, they'll run it against zone. It's a staple of theirs. And he just runs away from Carlton Davis. It's really not terrible coverage, but it's just very difficult to cover. In man coverage, he's running away from the deep safety, so the deep safety provides no help. So it's just a speed issue, and obviously Mahomes just put it right on him. But they're a very, very difficult defense, very difficult offense to defend.
Yeah. Greg Cosell, NFL Films, over 4 decades. Great seeing you again, Greg.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it.
You bet. Look at that. We got new information on LeBron this morning. New information. We may have to get back to that LeBron MJ debate. New information coming in. Wow.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you'd like.
Nearly 600 years after the invention of the printing press, the most important book in the history of the world has arrived.
That might be overstating things.
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things. It will change your life forever.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Most scientists agree that Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, is proof that time travel is possible. Because that is the only way to explain how a book this impressive was possibly made.
What?
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, will regrow hair, whiten your teeth, and improve your love life.
That's just not at all right. Well, the love life part, maybe, if you find someone who thinks smart is sexy.
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things. Available for pre-order now at StuffYouShouldKnow.com.
Now that is true.
My name is Lowell Berlanti, and I created the podcast Prodigy to find the answer to a very complicated question. Can genius be created? I asked academics, researchers, scientists, and the prodigies themselves to gain a better understanding of intelligence, skill acquisition, and expert performance. So disregard all simple explanations, because complex questions require complex answers. Listen to Prodigy every Thursday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2 days, it's the fight event of the fall as undefeated Earl Spence Jr. takes on Danny Garcia for the World Welterweight Championship. Available on pay-per-view or buy the fight on foxsports.com/PPV and watch on any screen you want.
Boxing is one of the last things that gets me to pay-per-view. It's one of the last, I shouldn't say that. UFC does too. UFC and boxing, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I just don't do pay-per-view on, but there's just something about and it's always one of these things, like I know the fight exists, I don't buy it in advance, and I'm just sitting there, and there's some psychology. This is why, by the way, they always, like the Tyson fight, they keep pushing it off, because everybody's like me, you're like, it's $50, and it's like, and I always rationalize it like, this is a business expense, I gotta watch this anyway. I may not talk about it a ton on the air, but I'm gonna talk about it a little, and I like watching fights. But it's like one of the last things, like, I'll just drop $75 and be like, hey, call a buddy over, and it's like, I got the beers, bring over some chips, let's watch a fight.
Well, I always say this, like boxing and UFC, you always say it's an event, but it's like you're watching history, right? Because no matter what, this is not going to happen again.
Right.
Like if you miss a NFL game on Sunday because you're watching another NFL game,
right,
that team is going to play next week, and maybe even if it's the last game of the season, most of that team will be back next year.
Right.
So, like, you may see it again.
Right.
That's why the playoffs are so big. That's why March Madness is so big. Like, you're only going to see this collection, like, this group of people one time do this thing. If you're watching a boxing event, like, this guy might retire, and you never fight again. Like, you have to be a part of that night.
Yeah. I'll watch it. I guarantee you that. Joy of the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Don't you just love Wednesday afternoon NFL games?
I thought it was. I just sat there and I was like, it was just. I just grabbed my computer. I literally had chips. That's my weakness, and I sat there with guacamole and chips, and with a Diet Coke, and sat and watched the game for 2 hours.
It's really, look, it was not an ideal for anyone involved, but, you know, having sports on at all of these random times after not having sports for 5 months, like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take a Wednesday afternoon game. Why not? So the Steelers remain undefeated. They beat the Ravens 19-14 yesterday. Not a very artistic win.
How many passes did they drop? God, they didn't do anything well.
It was something, and Mike Tomlin was not pleased.
I'm really disappointed in our performance tonight. We did enough to win, but that's all. It was really junior varsity, to be quite honest with you, and it was in all three phases. We couldn't run the ball effectively when we needed to. We dropped too many significant passes, very catchable, makeable passes. We didn't make significant plays in the special teams game. Our kickoff coverage unit wasn't good enough. We turned the damn ball over. We gave up big plays in critical moments on defense. Can't have it. They converted a long run on a possession down before the half. Unacceptable. They had a 70-yard touchdown late in the game. Unacceptable.
I feel like when Mike Tomlin is upset, he's upset at me. Like when you're listening to him, like you're like, you would not interrupt that man. If he is scolding you, you're going to sit there and listen to every word he says, and when he is finished, if he has given you an opening to respond, you will, and that's only if he's asked you a question. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and listen.
I've always appreciated Tomlin's ability not to sugarcoat stuff.
Yeah.
To me, he's a man's man. He's not trying to sell me something. Like Mike will say, we're great, we're not afraid. I mean, he's always asked these questions. This is why he's going to be a great television broadcaster. He ducks nothing. There is no salesmanship. He is telling you he is as honest. He should be a politician because he would just tell you, wear a damn mask. And you'd be like, well, Mike said to wear a mask, I'm going to wear a mask. There's no fluff to him. There's no agenda with Mike other than be good, and if you're not, I'll call it out.
And this is what you want to hear after. I mean, just the start of that game was a disaster.
Steeler fans have been whining all year. You're like the 7th best team in the league this morning.
Well,
I'm done.
They are undefeated, and if you're a fan, you're going to hang your hat on that. But
what's the value of that this morning?
Well, if you're a fan, but if you're Mike Tomlin, you got to keep it real. That was not the performance that you should have had against that Ravens team. They had no one.
It's embarrassing.
Like this is
we talk about good losses. That was a bad
win.
loss.
A bad win, yes. And that's what he said. Like they did enough to win, so there's that. But there's no reason the Steelers, and I don't think that they do. I don't think the team themselves walk away from that game feeling good about that performance. Also, they lost Bud Dupree towards ACL, so he is out for the season.
Bad news, because he was having a good year.
Yes, Alex Highsmith will replace him, who is a third-round draft pick rookie. Bud Dupree had 31 tackles, 8 sacks, 15 quarterback hits, and 2 forced fumbles. Obviously, they lost Devin Bush earlier in the year, tearing his ACL, so another really big loss. Not good for the Steelers overall. I mean, look, I still think the Steelers are a great team, and they're
going to get a
well
number
coached.
1 seed probably.
Yes, and that's what you want because there's only one bye this year. But
Tennessee.
No, I don't think they're going to lose to Tennessee. But it's like, look, that's a significant injury. That's not what you want, and that was not the performance that you wanted against the Ravens, who had obviously we all know what the situation with the Ravens is. So Texans receiver Will Fuller's season's over due to a PED suspension. He's also in the final year of his rookie deal, and Deshaun Watson is making it clear he wants Fuller to stay in Houston.
You know, Will's my brother. The whole organization knows that too. And, you know, make sure that we get him back for next year, especially in this organization. But, yeah, I mean, that's very important. So definitely one guy that I'm going to be working on this last month and off season for sure.
They got to watch out because they have Tunzel's expensive and Deshaun and J.J. Watt. And you pay they become the Cowboys, which is you're really thin and poor at certain spots, but you got 5 stars. Like I would struggle to pay Will Fuller. He's been hurt too much. And then this would tick me off. Knowing you have a contract year, this would, if I were GM, not a fan.
I mean, if Deshaun,
I know, but
how much else are you going to take away from Deshaun?
I know, but I'm a general manager.
Remember, he was talking about being traded, and after the deadline, Watson said it would have been hell if the team had traded him.
I know, but I can't pay Will Fuller. I can't. If you're not responsible enough with this, and you've had injuries, I can't pay him. Now, the left tackle, I told you a month ago, I think J.J. Watt, who, by the way, he wants to play in a winter. I don't know why they don't deal J.J. Watt. You can't tell me there's not. It's too late now. They'll have to do it next year. But I would take J.J. Watt's salary for a year.
I think with everything that happens this season with the Texans, they were just like, let's keep what we have in place and make these kind of moves when we have our new head coach and our new GM and, we're into our next season. But I'm with you. I don't think that J.J. Watt finishes his career in Houston.
Both people win. He wins and the Texans get salary cap relief.
Yeah. So all three of the Ball brothers are now in the NBA.
I saw this. So who signed with Detroit?
LiAngelo Ball
now, where was he
agreed to a non-guaranteed one-year deal with the Pistons. Remember, he played in Lithuania after he left UCLA. He went undrafted in the 2018 NBA draft. He played in LeVar's JBA league. And then he signed with the G League in Oklahoma City.
How did he do there?
He didn't play a game before the season was canceled due to the pandemic. So he was a practice player in December of 2019.
You're into this stuff. What's his rep? Like you like that ballslife.com?
I do like ballslife.com.
You're really into that. So tell me what's his game?
The underground NBA hoops
nerd.
Scene. I am. He shoots a lot. He's a good shooter. He's a little physical. He's not as quick as his brothers.
Oh, he's
very big.
He's got a better looking jumper.
There's a lot of people that actually feel like he should be playing tight end rather than pursuing a basketball career. But he wants to play basketball and obviously was good enough to be on a G League team and now is a non-guaranteed one-year deal with the Pistons. So he's going to try and make the team in camp is what's happening.
He's not super quick on this video, but he
doesn't have the speed of his brothers. No,
yeah,
he's a good shooter and he's not as quick. He's
big,
bigger physical player. But the bigger story, obviously, is LeVar. If you're listening, I would really appreciate it if you'd speak some manifestations over my life, because whatever this man says comes to pass when it comes to his sons. Like, he said that he was going to do this, and this is an incredible story. Like, all three of his sons are currently in the NBA. So that was going to happen.
Okay.
Nobody believed it.
I used to get hate mail because I would defend LeVar Ball, and I said, he got 3 kids offered to UCLA. I hope my kids can get into a trucking school. And so I'm like, I'm not going to bag on any dad who gets 3 boys offered to one of the best universities. UCLA has more people apply to UCLA than it has a huge international connection. So I used to get hate mail, like, how do you defend this, blah, blah, and I'm like, A, he's entertaining, B, he brags a lot, but that's sports, so's Conor McGregor, people brag, and the bottom line is, his sons, I was watching all this Chino Hills stuff on the internet, they were like crushing people. I'm like, they can play.
He's an AAU dad.
He's an AAU dad.
And if you spend any time around AAU sports, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he's over the top, and he says things that nobody agrees with.
That's fine.
But at the end of the day, everything you just said is true. And look, most people who haven't had a father in their life would love to have someone like LeVar Ball in their life campaigning for them. Now, no family is perfect, but he's great television. Can't deny that. And what he said was going to happens, no matter what you say. Like, nobody's going to risk their job to make LeVar Ball happy. Like, clearly they feel like his sons are talented enough to be in the NBA, and they're all there.
Every time I ask him to come on the show, he comes on. Like, I think he gets me. I like him. I mean, I think he's goofy, but who cares? I'm goofy. I mean, the bottom line is, loves his family. The boys love LeVar. They're loyal to sometimes.
Yes, and shout out to Tina, because she's been through a lot, and she clearly holds the whole family together as well, so she deserves a lot of credit as well.
Good stuff. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Line News.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's interesting, because Anthony Davis signed yesterday with the Lakers, so he's not now. His contract and LeBron's contract the day before, 24-hour period, they both signed. That means Giannis is not going to come play here. That's better for the league. Let Giannis stay in Milwaukee, which I think he'll probably do. Maybe Miami, but stay in Milwaukee. But it's interesting. When LeBron first came to LA, they had a bunch of young kids. They weren't very good. So our whole takeaway was, mine was, I was like, can they win one? That'd be unbelievable. Unbelievable. You win a couple in Miami, you go to Cleveland, and you win in Los Angeles. But now, we've got new information. Number one, LeBron and AD's chemistry is like the closest stars. I'm trying to even put any two together. I don't know if there's ever been 2 stars that like each other this much. Magic and Kareem got along. They were very different people, but they got along. But okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is they've already got a title. Number 3 is they had the best off season in the league. That's indisputable. And number 4 is Golden State's not in the way. And you start looking at all these Western contenders. So let's take Oklahoma City. They lost Chris Paul. Let's take the Denver Nuggets. They lost Jeremy Grant. The Clippers lost Landry Shamet and Montrezl Harrell and their head coach. The Rockets, although not a huge threat, lost Westbrook, their coach and their GM. Portland and Utah are good, but they don't match up with, they don't have anybody to guard LeBron. So Utah just does not match up athletically with the Lakers at all. They just don't. They don't have a wing defender, and they still don't, and they know it. And Portland, I think they got Robert Covington, so he's a long, rangy player, but they're kind of too backcourt dependent, frankly. So we got new information. This feels like, to me, this LA thing, this Laker thing is not going away, and you start putting up those. Remember, when Tom Brady, Joe Montana was 4 for 4. He was the GOAT. The minute Brady won a fifth, we didn't care about his Super Bowl losses. Like, he beat Atlanta. We didn't even argue about it. The next day it was like, okay, Tom's the GOAT, Joe's runner-up, even though he wasn't perfect. You start looking at this, Michael's 6 for 6, Joe's been 6 for 6. If LeBron gets to 6 or 7, much like Brady Montana, we're not going to care about the losses. We're just going to go, LeBron won more. Perfection matters until somebody trumps it with more titles and more volume. I mean, Magic was in 9 finals and won 5. If Magic has got 7 of 9, we're not talking about Michael all the time. So you start looking at the way this thing is going up and down, and what they're adding in LA, we got new information. This is a force to be reckoned with. Chris Broussard's around the corner of the Herd.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You still pay for cable to get Lifetime. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're basically a seasoned detective, and you're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, the hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Each week on Solve, you will untangle a case that has pushed detectives to their limits. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence from interrogations, crime scenes, and witness testimony to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Your cases are waiting for you. New episodes of Solve are available now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. 1 crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You Know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
Let's get right to Chris Broussard. Don't want to waste any time. The former New York Times sports writer, Fox Sports NBA analyst, now joining me live. Don't want to waste any time. Westbrook, John Wall trade. There was a draft pick. I don't care. It's the NBA draft. It's all about prospects anyway. I loved Westbrook over Wall as a trade piece. I mean, I think Westbrook's a much better player. Do you?
Yeah, especially at this point. I mean, he was better than John Wall anyway, but John Wall hasn't played a game in almost 2 years. He hasn't played a full season in about 3 years. So we have no idea what he's going to come back with. The only guy you can point to who came back from an Achilles injury and was the same is Dominique Wilkins. Now, that's a good sign for Wall because Wilkins was athletic, explosive as is Wall. But it's no guarantee he's going to be the same player. But even if he is, I think Washington won this trade because Westbrook makes them relevant. Yeah. Right? They haven't been relevant for a few years, out of the playoffs. Now you're must-see TV. Everybody wants to see what Westbrook and Bradley Beal can do. Right. They'll put shooters around him. They got Davis Bertrands, and they'll play off Westbrook and see what they can do. Look, I give them a shot to make the playoffs in the East. And this is what Westbrook has that Wall doesn't, even though both of them were explosive athletes. Westbrook plays with an aggressiveness and a ferocity that is so unique and so dynamic that it's an X factor.
for your team and for the opponent. It keeps the opponent off guard, off balance, because this dude is so unique and dynamic. And it's kind of like a boxer with a knockout punch.
Yeah, no.
He might not be technically sound,
right.
you know, can't do it. Deontay Wilder can't do much else, but he can always catch you. That threat is there, right? That's Westbrook. So at least you got that. I mean, you're not winning a championship in Washington, but you're relevant, you're sexy. You're a lot more fun than you were 2 days ago.
So LeBron and Anthony Davis are locked in now for a couple of years. A lot of stars in this league do not get along. Why do those two get along so well?
Well, one, LeBron is just, he's great at things like that. I mean, obviously he had his issues with Kyrie, but a lot of that was just Kyrie was the young gun and didn't want to hear from the older guy. But a lot of this, Colin, is where they're at in their career, okay? LeBron has done so much individually, winning championships. He's not threatened by AD whatsoever. So he's ready to mentor him. He doesn't mind if AD gets some shine or even the shine. At this point in his career, he's ready to mentor him. And when you bring two young guns together and they're both still climbing, that's when you often have problems. Shaq and Penny, they could have been one of the greatest duos ever, but they were both young guns and they were worried about who was getting the credit. In Philadelphia, the people will tell you that's the problem with Embiid and Simmons, is that they're fighting for credit. Who's the man? Who's the star on the team? Shaq and Kobe obviously had success, but they were still both so close in age, both in their prime and young and climbing, that they butted heads about that. Kareem and Magic didn't know, because Kareem had won a championship. He had his 5-6 MVPs. Magic's rookie year was his 6th. And he had been a while without winning, so he didn't mind a young gun coming in and helping him. And Magic wasn't threatened by Kareem. It was more like a big brother, little brother relationship. And that's what this is. This is big brother, little brother versus two little brothers who are fighting for daddy's attention. So I think that's a big part of why they do get along so well. And there's no threat there from each other.
You know, yesterday The Athletic broke a piece that was pretty remarkable on Kawhi, Paul George, the star treatment. And, you know, the NBA's got one king. It's King James. But there's a lot of guys that want the treatment like Paul George, and they don't have anything to show for it. Were you surprised by the animosity apparently behind closed doors with this Clippers team?
Well, I wasn't surprised just because I had been hearing it, you know, for the past few months that there were issues there. That it was really, you know, Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, and Pat Beverly were bothered by the culture change. Where, you know, before the two stars got there, they were the little engine that could. They had a culture, work your tail off, you know, and those three got a lot of shine, even though they weren't really stars. And then you bring Kawhi and Paul George in and everything changed culturally. And that was a problem. I was told, too, that, obviously some things Kawhi did rub guys the wrong way, not really practicing, not really being connected to the team, flying in and being late for flights coming from San Diego. Obviously that rubs you the wrong way. But for the most part, guys, what I was told, were not as bothered by Kawhi because he delivered. If you're going to get star treatment, they all understand. They've been in the league long enough to know there's star treatment for guys. But when you deliver, guys can live with it. Paul George wasn't delivering. When he's giving you 10 points in a playoff game, guys are going to be bothered by why are you getting this star treatment. I said this a few months ago. There were people on that roster that thought they were as good or better than Paul George. And I'm not talking about Kawhi. So they were the ones looking at it like, how is this dude getting all this special treatment? And I think I'm better than him, or at least as good as him. Why am not I getting that? So that was the problem. But I tell you what, Colin, I think that they're going to be better for it this year. I think they'll be humbled. I think they'll be motivated. Obviously, they got Montrezl Harrell out. They think that's addition by subtraction. Serge Ibaka is a great chemistry guy, locker room guy. He's close with Kawhi. He can bring out the fun guy in Kawhi. So I think the Clippers will be better. People are writing them off at their own peril.
Lakers should be the favorite, no question about it. But don't write off the Clippers just yet.
Chris Broussard, odd couple with Rob Parker, always looks so well appointed. So look at him; he's just very classy. You bring some dignity and class to our show, and it's certainly from where I sit, it's certainly needed. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, man. Love this show.
All right. It's the streaming service, everybody, you should like if you're into a bunch of stuff. Discovery Plus, all the shows, Food Network, Discovery Channel, HGTV, plus exclusive originals. You won't see anywhere else. It's coming in 2021, Discovery app. Yeah, here's some of the things, the Athletic article. Joy shared this with you yesterday. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were the only players to have their own personal security guards and trainers. Now, I will say for pro athletes, sometimes they have their own trainers. That's not. If you have the money, a lot of guys do. Russell Wilson's probably got his own trainer, Tom Brady. Leonard and Paul George had the power over teams' practices and travel schedule. James Harden has that in Houston. I don't love it, but it's what they had. Kawhi was allowed to live in San Diego and commute from there, which often made him late for team flights. That I don't like at all. Guys don't want to sit in don't make anybody sit in a tarmac. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George typically didn't speak to the media until at least 45 minutes after games concluded under the guise of post-game treatment workouts. Don't love that either. So I'll give you a trainer. A lot of guys have trainers. Your body is it's your commerce. And I don't have a problem. I don't love it, but I do get asking Kawhi and Paul George, what's the best time to practice tomorrow? I kind of get that. I don't like you telling us when the plane leaves. I don't like you being late to the plane. And just talk to the media. LeBron James literally walks off the floor every game and goes right to the media. He could be in Memphis. If the king could talk to the media, don't give me this talk to the hand stuff. Nonsense. Just go give 45 seconds to the young guy or gal that's on the sidelines asking NBA questions. Come on, the king does it. All right, hour 3, Greg Jennings around the corner. Live in LA, it's The Herd.
My name is Jamie Loftus, and I'm here to tell you about my new show, Lolita Podcast. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov is one of the most controversial works of all time, and our culture has done its protagonist a huge disservice over the years. I've spent the last few months getting to the bottom of how America turned this abused young girl into a sex symbol, and what that says about us. New episodes drop weekly on Mondays. Listen to Lolita Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcasts.
My name is Lowell Berlanti, and I created the podcast Prodigy to find the answer to a very complicated question. Can genius be created? I asked academics, researchers, scientists, and the prodigies themselves to gain a better understanding of intelligence, skill acquisition, and expert performance. So disregard all simple explanations, because complex questions require complex answers. Listen to Prodigy every Thursday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Gabby.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Nika. And we're the hosts of a new podcast called
Cadaver Gals. We're just 3 fun and flirty gals talking about all the fun and flirty ways that people expire.
Like how 3 people died because of a poodle.
Basically, this podcast is kind of like Sex and the City if they only talked about dead people. Join us as we laugh, but mostly cry, in the face of death.
So listen to Cadaver Gals.
Out December 9th, new episodes out on Wednesdays.
Listen to Cadaver Gals on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to The Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for The Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Falcons Saints is featured in this week's free-to-play Super 6 contest. Download the Fox Super 6 app and make your picks before kickoff Sunday for your chance To win Terry Bradshaw's $100,000, all you have to do is correctly predict the outcome of 6 NFL games. And for top stories, scores, and more, go to the Fox Sports app. Call and give us your winner and final score for Falcons Saints.
33-23 Saints. Yeah, I'm not going to be right. I have not picked an Atlanta game since the Brady Super Bowl. It is my...
You picked them, just...
I can't get Atlanta right, ever. By the way, when I went on Twitter the other day and said that, I'm like, I can't figure out. They're my Bermuda Triangle. My money disappears. You cannot believe how many people told me. They're my Bermuda Triangle. Like, everybody on Twitter was like, instead of ripping me, they're like, yeah, that's the team I can't. Nobody can bet Atlanta.
They're just a very unpredictable team.
Totally unpredictable. So last week, who thought they were going to beat the Raiders by 30?
And look at and think of all the massive leads they've blown too. They're just a very strange team.
Strange. Greg Jennings, 10 NFL seasons, played a couple of years with Brett Favre, 5 with Aaron Rodgers. He is now joining us live. By the way, Greg called the Niners-Rams game, and he's calling the Rams-Cardinals games. I'll start with the Rams, by the way. So, it's you watch this team, and there are games against Tampa, and I'm like, this is as good as anybody in the league, not named the Chiefs. And then you watch them against the Niners, and is it Kyle Shanahan having Sean McVay number? Is it Goff can't play under pressure? When you watch that, and you watch them unravel with the Rams as a former NFL player, why are the Rams so maddeningly inconsistent on offense?
Well, I think it's a culmination of both. But I think it had a lot to do with Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh and their scheme. Schematically, defensively, the 49ers, they were all over the Rams offensively. They have a tremendous amount of team speed, which you just can't account for. When you look at what the Rams try to do, what they do well, running that outside zone, establishing their run to open up their passing game, to establish that, you have to get those outside zone and those outside runs going. They did not do that against this fast flow 49ers defense. And Fred Warner with a large part, Greenlaw, like they have so many guys that can step up and can impose their will on a game defensively for the 49ers that it just really ruffled what they wanted to do schematically from the Rams offense perspective. And then I think too, Jared Goff is a quarterback that has to play in rhythm.
Yeah.
You get him going early, you get him connecting with his guys, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. The running game is going for them. He feels comfortable. He settles in a lot smoother. He's not a quarterback that is going to make plays on off-scripted opportunities. That's not his MO, and I think that's where the Rams struggle when the game doesn't go their way and they don't have that so-called first 15 running as smoothly as they would like to see.
So this is the second year for Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers. And I said this earlier to Greg Cosell. I can watch Aaron's body language. I think there's only been one time this year against Tampa that he looked distraught or uncomfortable. He looks more comfortable. So what they run, you've been around Green Bay and Aaron. That's what I see. Why is he seemingly so much more comfortable in year 2? What are they doing for him?
Well, a couple of things. He is his second year in the system, but more importantly, they've done what any quarterback and head coach should do when you have a talent like Aaron Rodgers, is you've implemented what works best for him, what he wants to have and produce within this offense and plays that he would like to see run, and then collaboratively you have what you want to do as an offensive coordinator. And Matt LaFleur has been completely open with that, and he said even last year that was not the case. It was more, it was my offense, but I noticed I had to allow him to be who he's always been. That's what makes quarterbacks, that's what makes any player in this league special, is if they're allowed to be themselves and allow that to translate to the football field. And that's what we're seeing in Green Bay. A culmination of Aaron being able to get his boots, his keeps, moving the pocket, allowing him to run a portion of what he does so very well, but he also knows what the implementation of what Matt LaFleur has brought to the table, it works, and he has bought in 100%.
So Seattle, it's Seattle did something this year so far that I don't think happens a lot, but I think good coaches and good teams can do it. They had a huge weakness, pass rush, and they solved it. They gave up a lot of picks, but they got Jamal Adams, and he plays kind of linebacker. They went and got Carlos Dunlap midseason, and some of their young players, L.J. Collier from TCU, have been coached up. And suddenly, it went from a weakness to they've had more sacks than any team in the league in the last month by 5. And I want you to go back to your career, and because I don't think it happens a lot, where you find a flaw and it becomes a strength. Did you ever play on a team in Green Bay that you thought, man, this is an issue in camp, and then by Thanksgiving you're like, this is actually one of our strengths?
Well, I don't know if we had such a glaring issue that we were able to bandage the way that the Seattle Seahawks have. We kind of did it in the draft. Pass rushing was kind of one of our flaws. We were not able to get pressure on the quarterback, opposing team's quarterbacks, and then you draft a guy like Clay Matthews, and everything changes.
Right.
It just opens up, and what it does, Colin, is for like a guy like Carlos Dunlap, it just opens things up. Once you have a pass rusher and you have a guy that can apply pressure, it's not so much about getting sacks. It's about creating space for one-on-one matchups so that offensive linemen can't double your best player and then you're eliminated with any form of pass rush. They can't do that now. You can bring guys off the edge. Carlos Dunlap, he's going to absorb so much attention, and he allows created space now for the other guys within that defensive line and then that front seven. That's why they have changed the game when it comes to pass rushing. And it's not so much sacks. It is about applying pressure, putting the quarterback under pressure to get rid of the ball quicker than what they would want.
So when you look at Brady's numbers, they're not terrible. 28 TDs, 11 picks, 95 passer rating, 64% completion percentage. They're not terrible. He's been inconsistent. And frankly, Arians and him have never worked together. So, some of it's a pass. When you watch Brady, are we being too critical? Has he actually been pretty solid? What do your eyes tell you, Greg?
My eyes tell me that he's been up and down. He has not been great. He's not been terrible. But when he's been bad, it has been bad, and he looks uncomfortable when it is going bad. And he doesn't look as though he can settle himself because of what they're doing schematically offensively. They don't allow him to just get rid of the ball in the timing that he wants because they want to push the ball down the field. That is not a strength of Tom Brady's. We've all said it. We see it. But I think more than anything, when you have a running game that they have, and you really don't rely on it as much, as heavily as you should, and then pass catching out of the backfield for his running backs, he hasn't had that, and that's something that he's been accustomed to. And so with all those variables in one pot, it is going to be hard for Tom Brady in year one. Remember, this is year one, to really be comfortable within an offense that he doesn't. This isn't like Aaron Rodgers and LaFleur in now year two. But in year one, there were some struggles. There were some tug of war, if you will. And that's what we're seeing in Tampa. Yes, Tom Brady's going to always say all things correctly and politically correctly and say, I have to be better. And yes, our relationship, Bruce Arians and we're great. But there are some things that I think we will see changed after this bye week.
So it's funny. Arians has been critical of Brady. Mike Tomlin yesterday just ripped his team to shreds. And it's just, I've never had a problem with that. I had coaches that were highly critical and a lot of volume, and it's like, yeah, it's fine. It doesn't work for everybody. And I just, as an aside, did you ever have a yeller or a screamer? Or did you ever have a coach that would call you out, publicly and rip you?
No.
You didn't?
No, I've never been on a team that had a coach that would just publicly, really, it's not even the team. He goes at individuals. And that's my only issue with Bruce Arians and the way he approaches it is he singles out players. And once you start singling out players, now what you're setting yourself up to do is every time a player has a bad game, are you going to call him out? Are you going to call everyone out? Is this going to be the trend that you've set? And so when you look at Mike Tomlin, he's fighting two evils, if you will. He has an 11-0 team. He knows they're really good. They played bad. He doesn't want them to drop a game that they can easily win. And that's what we saw yesterday, a game that they should win, and they didn't perform well. He's looking down the road. If we play like this, we will not beat the Kansas Cities. We will not beat the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs. We will not beat some of these teams that we know will give us fits in the playoffs and accomplish our ultimate goal. That's what Mike Tomlin is doing. He's getting ahead of his team having a lull. He does not want that.
Greg Jennings doing the Rams at the Cardinals game this weekend. By the way, the Cardinals lead the Niners, Vikings, Bears by 1 game for the final NFC playoff spot. So this is a big game. Rams at the Cardinals is
really big game.
It's a really big game. You're doing great work on those games, by the way, Greg. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you, Colin.
You bet. Yeah, that's a big one this weekend.
I'm Kate Berlant. I'm Jacqueline Novak. We're comedians, best friends, and consumerist hogs hemorrhaging cash in the wellness world. That's why we made a podcast, Poog, a quixotic quest for wholeness. Here's a little snippet of us trying out a top dollar massage gun on our muscle manipulation episode. Press on once. Now press the up dot. Oh, damn, bitch. 2100. Now, I want you to notice. Whoa. Do you want to know the story of the guy who created this device? No. No? You're the rudest person. I'm so rude. I'm here with this free product. They say float it. Ow, ow, ow. And then ow. go deep. Ow, the right inner thigh has pain. I repeat, the right inner thigh has pain. You float it in. You float it in. Whoa, the tension in the calves is reaching an all-time high. Though we suffer from no ailments, we are looking to heal. For us, salvation lies in the next product, practice, or potion. This is our hobby. This is our hell. This is our naked desire for free products. This is Poog. That's P-O-O-G. Poog on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, this is Jill Scott, and I am pleased to introduce you to J.L, the podcast. I am joined by my amazing, brilliant girlfriends, Laia St. Clair.
What up, though?
And Aja Graydon Dantzler.
Hey, y'all.
We are going to be talking about a lot of amazing things like individuality,
Family, and blackness.
Oh, Jill, I don't have time to listen to a podcast. Honey, listen when you're soaking in your bathtub. Listen on your long drive home or when you're shopping at the grocery store. Just throw those earbuds in and check out J.L, the podcast. Listen to Jill Scott Presents J.L, the podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, the Clippers did not live up to their very high expectations for the team last year.
Did not.
There's lots of blame to go around.
Lots.
Paul George explained some of his issues with Doc Rivers' coaching style.
Well, the way I was being used, I felt like I was, Doc was trying to play me as like a Ray Allen or like a J.J. Redick, all pin downs, all like, I can do it, but that ain't my game. Like, you know what I mean? I need some flow. I need some mixes of pick and rolls. I need some post-ups. All that. Just different touches, you know what I mean? And so it was just, that last season was just hard overall.
All the Smoke podcast, that might be what he felt, but the numbers do not support that.
What do the numbers say?
Well, the numbers say he was used as a pick and roll ball handler in 32.9% of his total plays last season, which was a career high.
Oh.
He had the exact same number of post-ups per game in the 2018-19 season in OKC as he did with the Clippers last year.
Oh.
And he had fewer catch and shoot attempts per game last season than he did the season before.
So he's just talking
in
out
OKC.
of his... But he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's saying.
Well, that's what he felt like happened.
Oh, he felt like that happened.
But
we feel a lot of
the
stuff.
numbers do not support that. However, he did say they didn't make enough adjustments during the Denver series. He said, I don't think we deserved it. We were not prepared enough going into it.
Well,
that I would agree with. And the adjustment thing is something else. Like he said that they just felt like they went into the next game like, oh, we're still up, 3-2. We'll win this one. Oh, we're still up. We'll win the next one. And they never really actually made the adjustments.
How about owning the fact that you didn't shoot well? Owning a little bit of this. A little?
I think a good chunk should go on.
So the data, that you provide says that none of what he initially said to those guys on the podcast is true. The preparation thing, I'm not there. So, I mean, listen, Denver.
Preparation and adjustments, I can't speak to the numbers for
Denver's
what
good.
you're actually doing.
Yeah, Denver's
we can,
good team.
because we can track that. Denver's a good team, but also I think a big thing with them is that if you are going to be the star and you're going to get star treatments, then you are also going to get the star criticism. And he's not been great in the playoffs. Kawhi has proven himself. Kawhi had a down playoff as well, but Kawhi has rings. So we know what Kawhi is. We know what he's capable of doing. He won Canada a championship. So while I do think a lot of blame goes on Kawhi, the bulk of it has to go on Paul George. You haven't proven yourself.
Well, it says here, according to The Athletic, that, and they always say Leonard and George, so both of them had their own security guards and trainers. Both of them had power over the team practice and travel schedule. Both of them didn't speak to the media until at least 45 minutes after the game concluded. So it sounds like a lot of this stuff to me was negotiated before the season started. Like with Steve Ballmer, like, I'll come, but me and Kawhi get boom, boom, boom. And the problem with that is when you stink in a series.
And again, I don't have any problem with it. We're in Hollywood. Stars get star treatment all the time. There's a reason for that. Because you sell the tickets and you sell the sponsorships and people come to see you play. And you're getting paid the big bucks. Well, all that comes with big criticism, especially in a city like LA. But when it comes to within the team and the issues that we're hearing, and we heard, this is not, like, all of this information is now coming out in specifics. But this was discussed immediately after they lost, that there was a chemistry issue. Immediately we heard from Lou Williams that was what the problem was. We were hearing that during the season. So this is not, it's just the specifics that we're getting. It's self-awareness. If you're the star and you're going to take this treatment, you've got to spread it around. And you've got to make it seem like you're not inconveniencing other people. Like, the plane being late, I mean, you can't be late to the plane. You just can't.
No.
You can't.
Pilots aren't.
Like, you're going to get away with it because you're the star. But, like, one time, okay, maybe there was a one-time emergency.
Well, there's not even...
more than once, to me, that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
Bad.
If you're the other star, if you're Doc Rivers, like, you have to just change it. Like, risk losing them. But you have to set a standard. So I just feel like everything just unraveled. And little things like that pick away at people. So LeBron James agreed to a 2-year, $85 million extension with the Lakers. The deal will keep him with the team through the 2022-23 season, which would be his 20th year in the NBA. 2023 also happens to be the year that his son Bronny will be graduating high school. So under the current one-and-done rule, Bronny would be eligible for the NBA draft in 2024.
Well, LeBron will be around.
LeBron has said this is one of his goals, that he wants to play with his son. Now, Bronny's a 5-star recruit, and he probably wouldn't be considered a true one-and-done prospect now.
What kind of game does Bronny have? What's his game?
I haven't watched a lot of Bronny tape.
He's on the far right there, right?
Yes.
So how old is he right there? 9 or 12? Or how old is he?
16.
Okay, so let me watch his game right now.
He's a sophomore.
So what kind of, is he a 2 guard? What is he? He looks big.
He's a sophomore. He's got 2 years left. He does play at Sierra Canyon. And he still has a lot of years of growing as well. Because as we know, boys grow for a long time.
Well, he's going to be a good ball handler because LeBron is a great ball handler, and LeBron's going to make him.
Doesn't hurt that you have personal access every single day to LeBron James to help you with your game.
No, LeBron will look at you can tell the ball handling. Yeah.
Well, his fellow classman Mikey Williams is regularly puts up 50-point games, and Bronny rarely hits double figures with Sierra Canyon. So he does have some development still to do, but
I'm going to give a call out.
Something.
Rashad Phillips watches this show. You know Rashad? He's really good at this stuff. Rashad, give me Bronny's game. Go to my Twitter account. Put it up there. I want to get the scouting report on Bronny's game.
Well, it's possible, and they are looking to change the rule, the one and done rule as well.
That's always been tricky to me. This is where I'm old school. I don't think the NFL uses this free marketing platform called college football, and it helps their sport. I don't like this marginalization that college basketball is bad. I think Zion got a shoe deal because of Duke, and I don't buy this idea that going high school to the pros.
I think there's massive value for certain players to go to college.
Yes.
Absolutely. Like Bronny, Bronny has LeBron James. So there's maybe for his game, for his development, it would matter.
But even if let's say LeBron had gone to college, he would have won a championship.
Sure.
I think LeBron today would be like, that's one of the coolest things that ever happened to me. I went to blankety blank Duke and won a title.
No, there's no experience like college. There's no romance that you're going to have with an experience like your college experience.
Cameron Indoor is the most unique basketball experience maybe in America.
I don't think that there's no value. I just think it should be an option because for some kids there isn't. And like Bronny, if he's good enough to go straight to the pros, which right now he's not, but if he was, you have LeBron James. Like everyone in the world knows who LeBron James' son is. So like the marketing aspect doesn't really matter. So Snoop Dogg is coming to boxing on a more permanent basis. We saw him Saturday for the Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson fight, and he was a thrill and a delight to all. Yeah. And he announced that he's partnering with Triller to create a new boxing league called the Fight Club.
What is Triller? I saw that.
Triller is like it's like TikTok.
It's the American version of TikTok.
It's like the other TikTok. Yes.
So what makes it different?
I believe Triller has like a relationship with like music artists, so they actually get paid for the music that is used on their platform.
So it's TikTok.
I could be totally wrong because I'm not a TikToker.
I'm not on Parler or Triller.
I have a TikTok, but I don't I don't know what to do with it. But the league will have 5 date events per year and have a mix of boxing and musical acts similar to the card this weekend. Snoop will serve as the host and announcer and will help with fighter and musical art selection and overall production of the events. It's going to be a mix of some celebrities who want to dabble in boxing and some up-and-coming boxers as well.
Okay, so I always had a theory on this. I think I told Dana White this. The UFC, these would never be their best fighters, but take former NFL guys and put them on your card regularly. NFL guys that are athletes, some will go into broadcasting, some will work in football, some are tough guys and they'll fight. The second thing is in boxing, which I think is a little safer in terms of if you have gloves. Octagon, if you get outclassed, it gets ugly fast.
I mean,
but in boxing...
We saw this weekend, you can't really play with boxing either.
No, but celebrity boxing matches.
So 2 celebrities who have never fought before. So it's not like this is the situation this weekend.
There's a lot of actors I'd like to punch right in the neck.
With Nate. I actually hosted a celebrity boxing thing in Miami a million years ago. I do not remember.
I would like to see some like a liberal Hollywood guy and a conservative guy.
As long as it's both of their first time, because I don't want to see what happened this weekend with Nate and Jake Paul. It was a disaster.
I think Tom Arnold would sign up for a 10-fight card right now with a bunch of people. He's yelling at everybody on Twitter.
I'm not fully against this, actually. As long as they're both amateurs and it's both their first time fighting.
He's screaming all the time at people.
Yeah, I would watch.
Yeah, so would I. Joy of the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News. Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio.
Get ready to laugh and learn. I'm Nick Smith.
I am Flamin' Road. I am he, she, we. He cash a check, she make the money, we spend it.
Laugh and Learn is a weekly podcast bringing you the latest headlines.
The infighting within the LGBT community is ridiculous. Baby, let me tell you about that rainbow in the front. Check the back of it. Potholes, thunderstorms, gunshots, all that.
Keeping you politically informed.
Because that's what we do. We wait to the presidency, but we don't think about all the steps that it takes to get to the presidency, which is congressmen and senators and judges and people put in place to think like us and look like us.
Mixed in with a little pop culture.
They ain't went to no Ice Cube. Understand, Ice Cube ain't even got that much juice. He ain't got that much power. This ain't Bad Boys in the Hood. He ain't Doughboy.
You never know what you're gonna hear.
Don't I look like Beyonce Mama? Don't I look like Beyonce Mama?
Subscribe and listen to Laugh and Learn on the iHeartRadio app or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Personal growth is challenging, but it doesn't have to be hard. When we lean into self-inquiry and self-discovery, we're able to love all the tiny little parts of us, even the pieces we don't want other people to know about. And that's what it's really about, right? Self-love, self-acceptance, self-discovery, excavation, expansion. We are the powerful co-creators of our lives. All we need are the tools to get there. I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but But the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect. And I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. New season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's the streaming service that has everything you're into. Discovery Plus, Food Network, HGTV, Discovery Channel, exclusive originals, coming in 2021 US only. All right, so, I'm into mock drafts, and it's interesting is the Philadelphia Eagles keep losing. They now have the 6th draft pick, and I think a lot of quarterbacks in this draft, would they go there? So we thought we'd play a game today called To QB or Not to QB, based on there are 5 to 6 quarterbacks. Everybody said could be first rounders. We have this emerging culture in the NFL where quarterbacks come out of college to the NFL and they're almost all working really quickly. So let's play To QB or Not to QB. Here we go.
To QB or not QB? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind of cowherd.
All right, the first pick, the New York Jets. QB or not to QB?
I would to QB. Trevor Lawrence is a sensational all-time top 10 prospect. Sam Darnold is averaging 13 points a game, can't stay healthy. I like Sam Darnold, but sometimes in life, everybody needs a reboot. And so I say, get a quarterback, get Trevor Lawrence.
To QB, I agree.
Yeah, it's an easy one. That's kind of an easy one.
This is probably also an easy one. The second pick, the Jags.
To QB. So Gardner Minshew is a backup. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the end, they just fired their GM. They'll probably fire their coach. So let's just clean house. Justin Fields.
Yeah, we thought for a second Minshew could make it happen, but no.
That's second in it.
All right, the third pick, the Cincinnati Bengals.
This is an easy one. Not to QB. They need a tackle. The best tackle in several years is available. Joey Burrow's good. He'll come back. So that's an easy one.
Agreed. To QB.
Yeah.
This one, it gets interesting. With the fourth pick, the Dallas Cowboys.
Now, I know this is not going to happen, but I would say to QB. So Dak Prescott's going to be owned, if they franchise tag him, let me look up the number, $38 million. Okay, this is a roster that is top-heavy. I'm paying Amari Cooper. I'm paying $38 million. Or I can draft Zach Wilson and trade Dak. Somebody will take Dak. Dak's going to get signed by somebody. This one, to me, I know it's not going to happen, but $38 million for Dak is a load, and I'm not comfortable paying that.
Is someone else going to pay him that for 1 year? Because that's what it would have to be if you trade him, unless they sign a deal beforehand. I would say not to QB. I'm sticking with Dak for another year.
Another easy one. Fifth pick, the Los Angeles Chargers. QB or not to QB?
I would not be surprised that they would trade down, so not to QB. That's an easy one.
Yes, great.
All right, here's where it gets interesting. With the sixth pick right now, the Philadelphia Eagles. QB or not to QB?
It's not interesting. He's been sacked 46 times. Once again, I don't even know if it's the strength and conditioning. Can anybody stay healthy on offense? They're not drafting a quarterback. Not to QB.
Not to QB. They have massive injuries, and something's going on with Peterson, the offensive system, and he's been sacked a lot.
With the seventh pick, the Carolina Panthers.
So, this is the perfect situation. It's a quarterback. I have 2 more years of Teddy Bridgewater. I like Teddy. But he's like Alex Smith. He's a grown-up. He'll be an amazing mentor. I can go get a Trey Lance out of North Dakota. I don't want to make him play in the NFL. Teddy, for 2 years, does an Alex Smith. He probably gets us a wild card berth. This is the perfect situation in the NFL. You have a good B quarterback and a good dude, Teddy Bridgewater, and an offensive coach. Probably a little more sophisticated offensive system than most teams. I draft a BYU quarterback, and he sits for 2 years. I love, by the way, last year's draft, they went all defense, and they hit some home runs. I love Carolina that hasn't taken a quarterback first round since Cam Newton. I love Carolina taking a quarterback.
I would say not to QB. If you're not 100% sure, you keep building around Teddy for a couple more years.
Eighth pick, Washington, QB or not to QB?
I think you QB. Dwayne Haskins didn't get much of a shot, but he's 3-8 and clearly inside the building they're not into him, so I'd QB it.
Yeah, to QB.
How about the Lions at number 9?
Well, they're going to have a new GM and a new head coach. gotta be honest with you. This is a real hard one. You know, Matt Stafford hasn't told me if he wants to stay. I think you're better starting from scratch, blowing him out, and drafting a quarterback. And Matt Stafford can absolutely get you a second-round pick. I think I start over and draft a quarterback.
I think they probably should, but it's the Lions, so they're not, and they're forever going to be with Matt Stafford, so I'm going to say not to QB.
How about the team that is the Bermuda Triangle for your wallet, the Atlanta Falcons?
I would absolutely draft a QB. I would you're going to pay Matt Ryan for 2 more. This is Carolina. So right now, Matt Ryan's the 10th highest paid quarterback and playing at about the 17th best quarterback level. You draft a guy 2 years. Again, they have players. This is what you want. You want a guy like Matt Ryan, who's a grown-up, that a young guy can come in and watch Matt Ryan, a total consummate pro for 2 years. And then, by the way, in 2 years, Matt will get an offer somewhere, and I have my franchise quarterback.
I think not to QB. 2 years is too long. They're pumping out quarterbacks like this. 1 year of sitting, I get.
All right, last one, because this one is interesting for one of you. The Dolphins at number 11 via the Texans.
It's really hard. Okay, so I'm going to go with this. And I thought a lot about this. Not to QB. Because I do believe Brian Flores believes my defense, the quarterback that fits my DNA, accurate, very few picks. That is Tua. So even if I have some misgivings, he's already been benched and hurt. There'll be 4 more quarterbacks next year. I think I'd get another offensive lineman and give Tua another full year.
I gotta see how the rest of the season goes. I know that's not an option,
but it is interesting. They're in a Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen are who you're going to have to beat. Play them 2 times a year for the next 12. You're going to have to play those guys 25 times. Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen.
Yep.
And if Tua's already been benched and hurt, and it's why the NFL's great. See you tomorrow.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, the hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Your cases are waiting for you. New episodes of Solve are available now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. 1 crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
Are you ready for best life minus the burnout? I'm Zuri Hall from NBC's Access Hollywood, and my new podcast, Hot Happy Mess, is all about the most important VIP, you. You're the star of your life, so own it. Join us each Monday as we discuss relationships, self-care, career, and much more. Our podcast is for mindful, ambitious, diverse millennial women who are ready for more happiness, laughter, peace, and purpose now. Listen to Hot Happy Mess every week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever.